Hello, and welcome to Scott's Odyssey. From a direct connection with the Scottish Highlands to having one of the oldest rivers in the world, all the way through creating famous cowboy hats and building the tallest stone building, Pennsylvania has a lot of really odd to see locations and facts that top everybody else. Welcome to the first 30 truly odd to see history facts about Pennsylvania. See you in a minute. Welcome back. If you've watched my videos before, thank you for your patronage. And if you're new to Scott's Odyssey, welcome aboard. So I figured I'd share with you some of the things I cross when investigating sites and the history of those sites and bring it to you in a round of facts that may just blow your mind. In our history of Pennsylvania, we learn about all things the winners of wars want you to hear, and the stories that bring money into progressive agencies who fail to tell you the whole story. As most of you know, and for those of you who are new to the channel, the Odyssey focuses on the whole history and the complete story, which ultimately brings to you information that helps make the story more relatable. And it shows you that those things in our past of who we once were are not much different than what we experience with who we are now. Now get ready for a series of Pennsylvania facts that will stir your brain and show you just another fantastic reason why our Commonwealth is historically so spectacular. In no particular order, let's begin this journey into the odd to see sites of our history. Number 1. In the late 1800s and well into the 1900s, more than any other country or combined countries in the world, Pennsylvania led the world in all facets of fuel, meaning timber, coal, natural gas, and yes, even oil, long before Texas even knew that they had black gold. You know, I was wondering why many of the coal miners in Pennsylvania were from Wales, England. And if you ever wondered also why, and why they were so good at their jobs, well, it's because they were just doing the same thing that they had been doing years earlier in Wales. Which brings us to number 2. The anthracite coal we mine in Pennsylvania is the same coal found in Wales, England. The reason for this is that the eastern portion of the United States was directly connected to the western portion of Europe, including the Appalachian Mountains. Which brings us to number 3. The Appalachian mountain range is the same mountain range found in the Scottish Highlands and were as tall, if not taller, than the Himalayas 480 million years ago when, number 4, life first crawled out of the sea and onto land, right here in what we now call Pennsylvania. Number 5, the land those animals crawled onto was mostly mud and dirt, and all the rocks you find in Pennsylvania today were formed long after those animals were gone and became extinct. Which brings us to number 6. The Susquehanna River is the 5th or 4th oldest river in the entire world, forming approximately 300 to 350 million years ago. And number 7, while not a river, Pine Creek in Potter County is the largest creek in the United States. Number 8, the Rockville Stone Arch Bridge north of Harrisburg, which was built to take wood and coal across the Susquehanna River, is the world's largest and widest stone arch railroad bridge at 3,820 feet long and 52 feet wide. Coming in at number 9, Kings Highway Bridge, or Holmesburg Bridge, or Pennypack Bridge, but correctly named the Frankfort Avenue Bridge, is the oldest existing roadway bridge in the United States, and it is still used heavily to this very day. And where you have bridge, you may have tunnels. Number 10, the Staple Bend Tunnel is the very first railroad tunnel in the United States and the 3rd tunnel of any kind that was ever built here. I'll leave a link down below to the video that I made about the actual Staple Bend Tunnel. Number 11, the Union Canal Tunnel in Lebanon County was the first and is the oldest tunnel ever built in the United States, and it still exists for you to visit today. The second oldest, just as a side note, is the Howard Tunnel over in York, PA. And while you're traveling to see that, drop over into number 12, Conestoga. Why Conestoga? Well, wouldn't you want to learn why a cigar became known as a stogie? Where the first cigar factory was built and where the Amish have been farming tobacco for nearly 300 years. Number 13. With all the talk about stogies and Conestoga, it reminds me of the Conestoga wagons and the fierce men who drove these wagons, the earliest form of real cowboys. And that's probably why John B. Stetson moved to Philadelphia and created the Stetson Hat Company, producing the original Boss of the Plains hat, the world infamous Stetson cowboy hat, originally made from beaver fur or rabbit fur with the ability to withstand the elements, right out of Philadelphia. Number 14. As I've explained many times before, people of Pennsylvania are not called Pennsylvanians, but rather Penamites. And you would respect that name much more if you realized it is how we sundered ourselves from them there damn Connecticut Yankees in not one, not two, but 3 wars. Not on the numbers list or specific to Pennsylvania, but if you didn't know, in the 1600s, when Old New York was once New Amsterdam, there was a lot of Dutch with the name of John and Cornelius. They pronounced their name as Jan and Keys. The names were so common that speaking of the Dutch in a derogatory manner was where we got Yankees, much like we did with the Russians and Ivans. British people often did this with people of foreign lands, even up to the Revolution, where the soldiers hired out of Germany, specifically from Landgrafschaft of Hesse-Kassel, were often routinely called Hessians. But Pennsylvania doesn't only compete with Europe, New England, and Midwest. We go after the West as well with our touting. Number 15, the steepest street in America. Yes, although San Francisco will try to argue otherwise, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania has the steepest street in North America called Canton Avenue with a 31.7% grade. As a side note, in 2010, San Francisco paved 30 feet of unpaved area to interconnect Bradford Street with an alley and claim that their normally 24% grade street now has a section that is 41% grade, making the entire street the steepest in North America. But my response to this is, welcome to Common Core math. And on the subject of math, number 16, Pennsylvania is home to the very first programmable general purpose electronic numerical integrator and computer. Yes, the world's very first iteration of what today we just call a computer, ENIAC. Not in any kind of logical flow here, brings us to number 17. Created by cutting down the only cherry orchard in Philadelphia, the oldest penitentiary in the country, opening in 1829 and fully active until 1970, the Eastern State Penitentiary, commonly known as the world's greatest penitentiary and historically known as the first true penitentiary. Number 18. Do you like bridges? Well, I like old bridges, and apparently Pittsburgh likes bridges too. Pittsburgh has 446 bridges within the city limits. That is 3 more than the runner-up Venice, the land of water. Why is this important? Well, it means that Pittsburgh has the largest number of bridges in any city in the entire world. Number 19. Have you ever heard of the Pennsylvania Rock Oil Company? How about Quaker State Oil? Well, if you didn't know, thanks to Colonel Edwin L. Drake out of Titusville, Pennsylvania is the birthplace of where oil to be used in commercial production originated. Yep, Pennsylvania, home to the original black gold. It would be another 7 years before Texas even found out that they had oil, and nearly 30 years after that before people went back to Texas to actually drill the oil because it was much cheaper to get it from Pennsylvania. Number 20. Have you ever heard of, performed, or had performed on you, the breath of life? Not sure? Well, previous to 1956, it only existed as a pseudoscience that was not understood, and usually it didn't work. But in 1956, Dr. Peter Safar, immigrant resident doctor who was kicked out of Vienna for being too witch-doctory, became the father of cardiopulmonary resuscitation, or more commonly, CPR. And later he created the idea of a portion of a medical office to be used as an intensive care unit, or ICU, giving special need to those closer to death and keeping them out of the general populace. Safar was nominated for the Nobel Prize 3 times and lost each one because higher up, non-immigrant doctors, under the currently mental state of academia, were a bit jealous of his discoveries. Speaking of CPR and ICU within medicine, number 21. Pennsylvania is home to the first hospital of the United States, called the Pennsylvania Hospital, founded in 1751. On to 22. In 1768, Obadiah and Daniel Gore first used anthracite coal in a forge, making Pennsylvania the first place in the world where rock coal was used for forging. Number 23. On February 11th of 1808, Jesse Fell of Wilkes-Barre decided to set a rock on fire. He did it on an open metal grate that made it easier to ignite within the household. That rock was also anthracite coal and introduced the first use of rock coal as a residential heating product. Now let's move on to number 24, which is just 0.8% less than the taxable income of an average American. And yes, taxation is still theft. Prove me wrong. Pennsylvania has an 18% tax on all alcohol. This was an emergency tax that you pay when you want to get stiff and is slated to assist the victims of the Johnstown flood. It was established in 1951 and is still in place to this very day. Number 25, in keeping with current events in the world, the Apollo Affair took place in 1965. What was the Apollo Affair? Oh, well, that would be when NUMEC in the Pittsburgh suburbs of Apollo and Parks Townships incidentally lost 200 to 600 pounds of highly enriched uranium when they were visited by Raphael Eaton, an active member of the Israeli Mossad, as well as part of the Ministry of Defense of Israel. Within 2 months, Israel now had nuclear capabilities, and within the year, they had their first active nuclear deterrent. Number 26. We recently discussed how Shippensburg was named after Edward Shippen, the second mayor of Philadelphia and a former Chief Justice to the Supreme Court, as well as interconnected in several other videos I've presented here in the past, identifying his land grant from William Penn and so many other interconnections. Well, in one story I talked about his daughter, Peggy, but what I didn't mention is that Margaret Peggy Shippen was the wife of Benedict Arnold. And history is starting to reveal that Peggy, who was in an extramarital affair with British General Sir Henry Clinton, was most likely a spy, and the direct reason why Benedict started speaking with Clinton before his alleged betrayal in the Revolution. And if that wasn't a distance to travel on interconnected historical highways, number 27, the 360-mile direct route of the Pennsylvania Turnpike is the most expensive toll road in the world at $124.90 end to end. So I travel, which leads us to number 28. In 1948, Mahanoy City is where John Wolson lived and decided that because antennae were not able to receive signals over the mountains and through the valleys very well, that he would run a wire to everybody's house so they can watch television, thus creating the very first cable television system in the United States. 29. You know that Pittsburgh likes bridges, and one of those bridge builders, well, he got bored. His name was George W. Ferris. Yep, the man who created the very first Ferris wheel. Number 30. We often hear how many inventors were involved with radio. Tesla inventing radio concept, Marconi inventing the ability to transmit a single tone. But did you know that all they did was set the foundation? The very first message ever sent was through a device developed by a Jesuit priest, Father Joseph Mergus, in Wilkes-Barre. He even obtained 17 patents on all his manners in which to actually and successfully transmit information through radio waves, much more than just a single tone. Unfortunately, 3 months after creating the Universal Aether Telegraph Company, a storm took out his antenna mast and he decided it to be an act of God. So he dissolved the company and went back to assisting the needs of fellow Slavic immigrants at his church. And he built a library, cemetery, gymnasium, multiple playgrounds, and several schools with all the money that he earned from the patents. You didn't think I was just going to leave you dry like that, did you? Bonus number 31. Do you like to read? Well, I do. And it's really neat to know that aside from the creation of the public library system, thanks to Ben Franklin, Bethlehem, Pennsylvania is home to the oldest bookstore in America and the oldest continuously operating bookstore in the world, the Moravian Bookshop. And just because I'm having so much fun doing this, bonus number 32. Last but not least comes out of Philadelphia. City Hall, the building only built of brick, white marble, and limestone, making it the tallest masonry building in the world at 584 feet tall. And that wraps up this first edition of an Odyssey Shotgun Round of Pennsylvania Odyssey Things and Historical Facts. Leave me a comment about which one of these facts you knew, or didn't know, or wish to contest, or if you even like the video. Also leave a comment if you know of other interesting and odd stories, sounds, and histories of Pennsylvania. Trust me, I got tons more coming. If you learned anything or found this video entertaining, give it a like, hit the subscribe for more Odyssey videos, stop by the merch store, drop by Patreon or PayPal, help support the channel in bringing you more of Pennsylvania fascinatingly weird history. As always, I thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.
Thank you.